Hey everyone, this is Nate Zobwaiter from Engineering Symbiosis AD, coming at you with the re-recording for my whiteboard video lecture session 5, on my Symbionic Centropic electrical cycle theory, and this is a rough schematic blueprint, not an exact layout, but it does describe the basic mechanical principles that would underlie my three-tier soft robotic micro ecosystem containment unit or conduits. So, and before I ramble on forever, I will switch over to the whiteboard. Now, since my previous recording, I made some slight modifications for reasons of clarity. So, I'm going to start with the first tier of my soft robotic biogeochemical containment units or conduits. Now, if you look over to the left on the bottom left corner, this is a soft robotic containment unit or conduit that is meant to house pure biogeochemical abiotic substrate. So in this case, all three of the conduits are demonstrating the hydrological cycle because the hydrological cycle is the easiest to demonstrate conceptually due to the fact that it's one of the main 5 primary biogeochemical cycles, and it's also the medium for many of the other biogeochemical cycles because it can cycle nitrogen and nitrates and nitric acid for the nitrogen cycle, It can cycle carbon for the carbon cycle. It can cycle thermal heat or energy for the solar cycle. It can cycle minerals and soil nutrients for the soil and sediment cycle, And the reason I have a pure abiotic soft robotic biogeochemical containment unit is that it allows the in and out flow between the urban built and natural environments to just be able to handle abiotic biogeochemical substrates and also provide more purified water going in and out of the building to the other soft robotic tier 2 and 3 microecology containment units. So I hope that makes sense. Pure biogeochemical cycle, hydrological cycle. So now I'm going to move up to the top right where it shows a basic representation. I'll zoom in here of a soft robotic containment unit or conduit for a micro ecosystem or microecologies and microorganisms. So in this case, I'll zoom in a little more. The green or turquoise squiggles, represent basically wetland grass or a miniature wetland ecosystem. The red dots are meant to represent flies, dragonflies, or some kind of flying insect. In the water, I didn't have enough space to draw small fish, but it's implied that like small fish or tadpoles could survive, and maybe some other wetland plants that are found in marshlands and wetlands in our region of Ontario or anywhere in North America. And to the left of the soft robotic conduit for the microecologies, there's a poorly drawn, and again, I apologize for my poor technical drawing skills. This is why I used AI to help me with schematics, because I have spastic cerebral palsy and a lot of muscle tension. But this represents solar energy coming in through the micro ecosystem soft robotic containment unit. And the reason I have a separate tier for the soft robotic microecology or microorganism containment is that if you read my second paper, Symbionics or urban ecological niche prosthetics as the first architectural and industrial application of the biogeochemical cycles, it explains how to achieve what I've called urban natural biogeochemical symbiosis between the built and natural environment to make the urban environments conducive to natural life and biodiversity bounce back and participating in the very macro and micro ecosystems that urban development has disrupted for centuries. All we would have to do is augment a class or tier of soft robotic containment container units or conduits with microecologies and microorganisms, because, like my paper says, you don't need to cycle entire Canadian geese between a built and natural environment to maintain a life-conducive environment in an urban setting for Canadian geese. You just need to start with the primary soil microecologies, aquatic microecologies, terrestrial microecologies, and the like, that would facilitate larger ecosystem development and larger organism development that Canadian geese, for example, rely on for the food web. So that's my working theory anyway, and that's how nature does it in evolution. It starts from the ground up. It starts with small single-celled organisms and small single-celled and microecologies, and then builds its way up to larger scale organisms and then larger scale ecosystems. So that's the working theory. Now, if we go to the sorry, when I said go to the right, I actually meant the left, so I reversed direction. I had the directions mixed up. So if we go to the right here, this is the same representation of a controlled open system, not completely closed system, because as I said in my previous recording, I do not design any of my inventions, which include 18 or 19 by now, to be closed systems, because that was the primary failing point of Biosphere 2 in Arizona in 1992, was that they tried to design a completely closed macro set of ecosystems rather than allowing for outside air, water, and solar exchange between Biosphere 2 and the surrounding Arizona environment, which could have staved off ecosystem collapse. And if they had kept reintroducing different types of organisms from the outside that are terrestrial to the Arizona ecosystems that Biosphere 2 is based. So this microecology, or in this case wetland microecology, soft robotic containment unit, again, they don't need to be rectangular or square, but it was the easiest to draw. But it shows the same wetland micro ecosystem or microorganism ecosystem, if you like, attached to a microbial fuel cell. And one of my primary ways, if you're familiar with my central equation for natural urban biogeochemical symbiosis in my first two papers, I use what's called down here the timed biogeochemical cycle interval. This would primarily apply at the tier 2 level. So if any of the microorganisms introduced into the soft robotic microecology containment unit would foul or overgrow, or one species would outcompete the other, or just general biological fouling or ecosystem shock or collapse, there would be mechanical soft robotic actuators, motors, and other means to expel the fouled ecosystem organic material out of the tier 2 soft robotic containment units and into the microbial fuel cell to power the electrification of the 5 main biogeochemical cycles, or artificial photosynthesis, represented by an artificial photosynthetic bionic leaf that is making great strides in achieving more photosynthetic reactions than natural artificial photosynthesis, or so some experimental results have shown. We're actually surpassing natural plants' ability to produce glucose fuels through photosynthetic chemistry or photosynthetic reactions. And ideally, you would have the microbial fuel cell and or the artificial photosynthetic bionic leaf or artificial photosynthetic system hooked up to a electromotor that you can see here in the middle between the MFC and the tier 2 microecology ecosystem containment self-robotic unit. That's supposed to represent like a little electro motor turbine. And so, what would you do with the fouled? What would you do with the fouled microorganisms or overgrown microorganisms or collapsed ecosystems or died off ecosystems inside the microecology or microorganism containment units? Well, my engineering principles would have us reuse the organic waste and put it inside the microbial fuel cells and microbial desalination cells as fuel to power the MFCs for later or other types of bioreactors. And so using the timed biogeochemical cycle interval that mirrors the metabolic rest that all microorganisms and macroorganisms need to achieve to maintain homeostasis within their own metabolism and their respective ecosystems. So the TBCI, the timed biogeochemical cycle interval mechanical principle, is designed to preemptively offset biological fouling or ecosystem collapse and reuse the organic waste from that collapsed microecosystem or fouled or overgrown microecosystem and put the material into microbial fuel cells or other types of bioreactors to electrify the motor that would deliver a current into a small metal pipe running through the middle that you can see here, that one black line, or that gray line underneath the squiggled black line representing the waves of the water. So an electric current would run through a small metal pipe or a electrically conductive small metal pipe, whether copper, iron, silver, and maybe even gold. And and even though the water or salt water could corrode the metal pipe, or what was the word I'm looking for? Conductive nanofiller biopolymers, if we don't want to use metal. If it corrodes the biopolymer or metal pipes to electrify the 5 biogeochemical substrates, we would just use the principles of industrial symbiosis to take out the biopolymer or metal pipes for the electrification of the hydrological water, nitrogen, soil, and sediment and oxygen cycles to be smelted back into raw iron ore to be used again to be smelt back into iron ore to be reused for something else, or make new electrically conductive metal pipes or biopolymer pipes. Now, I'm going to turn my camera. Excuse me there. Sometimes when I talk really quick, air fills my throat, and I just get these tiny burps, but I try to not to expel them while I'm recording. So basically, an older version of my Symbionic Centropic electrical cycle theory was a series of iterative inventions called the Symbionic electrical cycle system. This was a highly speculative concept within my body of theory, probably the most speculative, and it was kind of a gigantic system I pictured for way later when the main mechanical thesis of my designs were already developed. Now, one of the mistakes I made for my Symbionic electrical cycling system was that I thought using the principles of electrical agriculture or electroculture that I was trying to find a way to reground access industrial electricity, whether unused, overloaded. So like if there was a grid failure or a lightning strike that overloaded electricity in appliances or homes, that it could somehow be grounded back into the soil or the water or the air of the surrounding natural environment that surrounds the urban environment to somehow use the low voltage, or in some cases higher voltage electricity, to encourage the breaking up of different minerals, and to encourage the growth of amino acids in soil microecologies, as well as in the atmosphere surrounding the urban environment. So, like the Urey-Miller experiment showed that if you run a low to mid electric current through the a contained, controlled environment with all of the gases that mirror our atmosphere, and you run an electric current through nitrogen gas, oxygen gas, and carbon dioxide, all of the chemical constituents of the atmosphere, they prove that you can create the basic building blocks of life, which are amino acids. And so I thought I could find a way to reground high industrial electricity back into the natural environment to encourage micro ecosystem health and growth in the oxygen microecologies, the aquatic microecologies, and the soil and terrestrial microecologies. But that has high impedance challenges. And a few days ago, I finally came up with a breakthrough, and I realized that nature does not cycle raw high voltage electricity or free flowing ions back into ecosystems. It has to use a biogeochemical or biochemical geochemical substrate to deliver electricity back into the natural environment. Other than lightning, you don't really see nature ground high voltage electricity into the ground or the aquatic environments without certain damages to macro and micro ecosystems and organisms. So the whole central thesis of the symbiotic centropic electrical cycle theory is that by electrifying the 5 main biogeochemical cycles, the nitrogen cycle, the oxygen cycle, the hydrological cycle, the sediment cycle, and the soil cycle, you would essentially be able to deliver the benefits of an electrified microecologies in soil, air, and water that would kill pathogens and possibly other invasive microorganisms at low voltages, without the risk of damaging or destroying the positive soil microorganisms and bacteria, and aquatic microorganisms and bacteria, and oxygen or air microorganisms and bacteria that you would need to facilitate life conducive environments in a naturally linked urban environment. So yeah, that's essentially the entire this whiteboard. Is that by using this 3-tier system, we could not only power our buildings, but also deliver electrified nitrogen, water, air, and soil and minerals back into the environment as a way to reuse unused or access industrial electricity not being used, whether through absentee ownership buildings or property, or abandoned property, or just electricity that's not being used or rerouted. And so essentially, this is my thesis of how we can use industrial electricity like those we see in modern generated by modern grid systems to help create a life conducive urban environment, so that the urban environment can become part of the natural ecosystem again, or what I have called the technosphere integration with the biosphere. Okay, guys, if you're watching, thank you for listening, and if you have any questions about my three-tier system, please let me know in the comments below. YouTube's monetization rules have completely changed, and their viewing algorithm is getting more and more ridiculous. So please like, share, and subscribe. I put more than 3 years of hard work into this channel, and I don't want it to be swept away by the algorithm. And before I even started this YouTube channel, I have almost 12 years developing this theory. So please, guys, please like, share, and subscribe Engineering Symbiosis AD. It really helps just to keep the algorithm from keeping down my channel, and I'm really trying to get my channel out there, not just for me, but to inspire other ecological engineers, environmental engineers, solar punk artists to envision a type of technology that is ecologically integrated but still advanced enough to give us the modern standard of living that we all take for granted and appreciate. And this is the cool thing about Symbionics, or urban ecological niche prosthetics, is that my theory presents what I call a third technological way that can be neither labeled as high tech nor low tech, but somewhere in between. But it is also my thesis that through ecological integration with the natural environment, with technology and architecture, we would actually, with biogeochemistry and the planetary cycles, we could actually achieve a more advanced technology than a technology completely separated from the natural environment. I know that's very counterintuitive, but Symbionics, or urban ecological niche prosthetics, actually provides the first real functional, scientifically viable blueprint for an ecological post-scarcity system, because we can produce the very food, water, and energy needs we need right at the very sites that we live, through Symbionics, or urban ecological niche prosthetics, through urban natural biogeochemical integration and technosphere biosphere integration. Okay, guys, thank you, and please like, share, and subscribe. I cannot emphasize that enough. Thank you guys for anyone watching this, and get out there and inspire others to create other alternative ecological paradigms that can outdo this failing corporate capitalist sustainable greenwashing and bluewashing paradigm that is failing. Alright guys, thank you. Bye.